Why does the majority of Americans seem to hate the idea of social contribution? Because a large amount of people don't feel like we get good value from the taxes we already pay. So there's often a skepticism that raising taxes would actually result in something that is worth the extra taxes taken. Americans don't trust the government. Full stop. Americans don't trust the government to spend their money on the things they say they will. Excise taxes on cars, for example, should be spent on roads. They're actually spent on whatever the government decides they want to spend it on. There's also many Americans who are skeptical that the government won't lord the control they're given over them for political reasons. Like how Chinese citizens who oppose the government aren't allowed to take buses or planes or own homes. Imagine a world where disagreeing with your chancellor means you can't see a state-funded doctor. Social studies teacher here. There are a lot of answers on this threat that range from being misguided to being outright infactual, including Americans lack empathy to Americans hate the government to the US is too big. These answers are barking up the wrong tree and would be more appropriate, although still misguided, when discussing, for example, state-run healthcare. Therefore, I'm going to give you a different perspective, one that I hope is more wholesome. I'm going to assume that you're familiar with the fact that Americans love their freedom. There are times at which freedom stands at odds with solidarity. In most of these cases, Europeans pick solidarity, whereas Americans mostly go for freedom. Say that we have an American. He eats a lot of food, to the point where he becomes morbidly obese and needs medical care. Who pays for this medical care? Himself. He pays for the consequences of his own actions. In Europe, or at least most of Europe, if one were to eat himself to hospitalization like our American friend, then their medical care would be paid for mostly by their fellow citizens. This has an interesting social consequence. When we see an obese American in his mobility scooter going through Walmart, we don't see it as a social problem, because after all, he will pay for it. However, when Europeans see an obese person, it is inherently a social problem due to their system of solidarity. The American nation has voluntarily chosen to not have such a system of solidarity, or as you call it, social contribution, because it wants to have citizens that can be free to make choices. If it were to implement a European-style system of solidarity, it would, from the American perspective, erode freedom. The European argument against this is that the increased level of social security far outweighs any benefits of free choice. Because after all, being in significant medical debt doesn't exactly constitute freedom, as it chains the person to an increased exploitation of labor. I hope that this explanation offers you some perspective on this issue, and helps you understand that the American answer isn't an inherently dumb or ignorant answer. It's a choice. You can find it distasteful, as I personally do, but it's very much a conscious choice by the majority of American citizens. If you have more questions, feel free to ask. Edit. I changed the wording of the intro of my explanation, as the original wording was not entirely professional. Everyone that I know, even conservatives to the point of making Trump look liberal, have absolutely no issues with contributions to healthcare, food, clothing and anything else. The three big issues that they have. 1. They don't believe the government will spend the money responsibly and effectively. 2. They don't want taxes being raised any more than they already are. 3. They don't believe that income redistribution amongst citizens should be mandatory. The people that I know may be a minority, but all of them believe enough in supporting others that they give to tons of local charities, food kitchens, charities that help pay for medical bills, clothing, etc. They just don't trust the government to do it for them without being a detriment. It's completely different in every state. Californians have tons of social safety nets, whereas New Hampshire or Montana will have significantly less. We are different in every state politically and culturally. America isn't one country, it's 50 bound together by a monolithic federal government. The same reason you believe the way you do. We are raised that way, it's a cultural difference. A lot, not all, of Americans have the attitude that anyone can make something of themselves if they just try hard enough. When we see people who are poor, we assume it's because they're just not trying hard enough, that their situation is the result of their own bad decisions, and it's not our responsibility to fix that for them. I don't live in the US, but I also understand the perspective of people being against social contributions. Currently where I live, it's becoming insanely difficult to reform and regulate taxes. Many people are moving away from the traditional workforce and are exploring entrepreneurship. Many people are also becoming wildly successful but go under the tax radar because it's difficult to regulate sole traderships. Taxes on income are the most reliable way to tax persons, so if you move to consumption taxes, fuel, groceries, etc., then you can disproportionately burden, say, a single mother of 4 who uses more groceries or gas than a 25-year-old making 6 figures. I have a degree and a decent job, but I have relatives who make twice what I make owning their own business but aren't registered and don't pay taxes. The question then becomes, who gets captured in the safety net? Who's truly a vulnerable member of society versus who's just leeching of the gov? The short version from the perspective of a 24-year-old is that charismatic assholes are using fearmongering to convince the more susceptible parts of the public that the things that would primarily benefit the public are bad by using terms such as socialism or communism. I think that was Bernie Sanders, highly popular socialist running for Democratic nominee. Downfall in the end. Too many people using fearmongering to sway people away from people wanting to do actual good. Corruption, competition, and convenience. Corruption, since most U.S. citizens lack the confidence in government that funds will be allocated properly. Competition, because everything in the states is competitive. Notable since financial well-being is inextricably linked to social status. Convenience, because we are either lazy or overworked, and often self-centered. Self-centered in the sense that the American dream encourages the prioritization of the individual rather than the collective. Those are just my thoughts, though. A lot of factors. 1. American culture strongly believes in the Protestant work ethic and prosperity gospel, even though many people may not recognize this. Basically, if you work hard and God loves you, you get monetary benefit in this world as a sign that you are going to heaven. I don't super want to get deep into predestination here, but that's part of it. The corollary to this is that rich people work hard and are literally better than poor people. We've moved away from this being an explicitly religious thing and it is more secular now. But many people in the US truly believe that poor people are poor because they are bad, lazy, dishonest too. The government never efficiently spends our taxes. Our infrastructure is falling apart. The military gets an inconceivable amount of money and still can't win a war, and shouldn't be in the wars we're involved in. Our schools are overpacked. We bail out massive corporations for their own mistakes instead of the people the corporations are stealing from. Police budgets go up every year and the police use those funds to protect property rights of business and the rich while harassing or killing the poor of all races, but particularly Black and Indigenous people. We see this and it's difficult to see that taxes can help actual people. 3. Both political parties take bribes from corporate interests regularly. How can we trust them to help us when they make millions on insider trading and gifts? 4. Our votes don't actually matter. We don't have proportional representation. Low population states have a disproportional amount of power in voting. These states also tend to be rural and reactionary. However, even when the Democrats win Congress and the presidency, they still don't follow through on any promises of helping people and instead turn around and help only corporations. 5. The education in this country is truly abysmal. We are indoctrinated from a young age that the US is the best country on earth and everywhere else wants to be like us. So why would we change? Americans donate more to charity per capita than any other country. A fake social contribution isn't the issue. People don't like getting ripped off by the government. We are empathetic and do believe everyone should have healthcare and a safety net. We don't trust our government to effectively and efficiently provide those things. We are already giving 30% of our income and see very little for it other than their yearly raises, bonuses, retirement and gold standard health insurance. Not a health insurance that we have access to. So, you see, it's not that we don't care about our fellow man. We often help each other individually. We just don't trust our government to take our income, that we can barely subside on now, and provide for us. The VA is an excellent example of their failure. My father refused to go back to the VA after one appointment. He gave our country 20 years. Not to mention we, as dependents, gave our childhoods to constant moving, living on base, moving to third world countries, having no roots or place to call home, living with the health consequences of that now. There is an entire generation of people who grew up in the Red Scare, Cold War era where communism was perceived as a very real threat. Politicians today have leveraged this ingrained fear by making socialism and communism synonymous. This has led to a large subset of Americans having an almost Pavlovian response to anything labeled socialist. Multitude of factors. Overly religious, overly capitalistic, overly hypocritical. The people that have fallen on hard times don't realize how much they were helped by the social safety nets ranging from Medicaid to food banks to homeless shelters. If they ever get out from poverty, they may over-credit God. TBH, any credit at all is too much for being gracious and saving them. They then cling on to what they have and don't want to give it up to help anyone else. Maybe they fear going back to poverty if they share their fortune. And on the flip side is the people who have never known hard times. The rich that can think of more lavish expenses, and should they ever donate their wealth, they may regret not having enough saved to take that trip to space in a megayacht. Of course, not everyone is so selfish in America, but those who are upset about helping others are the most outspoken. Those that help don't scream and cry. They are too busy helping. I don't think a majority of people actually feel that way. There's an obscene amount of manipulation done by the media on stuff like that. Smear campaigns and made-up polls. It's what we get for letting rich people control everything from politics to the news. Perhaps you should ask yourself why Germans trust their government to take care of people in need. It's not like you have a great track record in this regard. Our nation was founded because we were taxed too much by a government we didn't trust. Even our founding documents are written with the idea that the government will screw you if given the chance. So we kneecapped its power right from the get-go. So a combination of distrust in the government and a hatred of taxes primes us to be skeptical of anything that one gives control of a program or industry to the government and two raises taxes. They don't. You're just consuming media that presents a very skewed view of what the majority of Americans think and feel. U.S. has Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, EBT, food stamps, housing assistance, 12 years of provided public education, bachelor education assistance including scholarships, subsidized public universities, and the list goes on. Taxpayers spend trillions on social programs, and to suggest Americans don't care and Germans do is ignorant political rhetoric. The difference is where we draw the lines, and just like Germans, we fight over that all the time. First of all, we could definitely do it. Nationwide healthcare could be possible. However, the issue is this. Our government is so corrupt that they would be too busy trying to figure out how to line their friends' pockets with the money before they put the people first. I'm not saying this isn't a bad idea, but there's no way currently our country could execute this in an effective way.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.